Is there some tip or technique, some tool, some insight, some idea for learning Hebrew? Maybe there's something from Kabbalah, something from Jewish mysticism that can shed light on something I could use, something that will help me to learn Hebrew. And learning languages is just one example of where we tend to put limits on ourselves. We see walls and boundaries ahead of us, whereas really it's a clear path. That the limits are self-imposed limits, sometimes as a result of self-doubt, and we should know that God has put us here for a mission and a purpose, and that the soul is limitless. So that's the first thing, is that, of course, if we set ourselves to something, that God helps. Not only does God help, but the idea is to help ourselves. We're here in this world for a reason. We have this gift of life, so to make the most of it. But it's appropriate that we speak about Hebrew, the Hebrew language, the language of creation, actually, that God created and continues to create the world by means of the 22 Hebrew letters. Like today, they say maybe reality is a program. So if reality is a program, it's for sure modeled after the Hebrew language, after the 22 Hebrew letters. So reality is much more than just a program. It's a revelation of the oneness of God. So by learning and speaking the Hebrew language, the holy tongue, we're also connecting to the language of creation. It's the language of that Torah that the Bible is taught. It's the language of prayer, and it's the language of prophecy. So it's very special indeed. It's a very good idea to do our utmost to try to learn Hebrew, especially authentic biblical Torah Hebrew, to be able to understand the Torah in its original Hebrew. But for many of us, maybe it seems difficult. So what are some ideas? So the first idea we'd like to present is from the Kabbalist, the great Kabbalist, Rabbi Abraham Abulafia. And he said that all languages derive from Hebrew. Meaning what? Hebrew, the Hebrew letters, are called vessels. They're vessels for divine light, for the channels of creation. These channels of divine light are housed or contained in the Hebrew letters, and that's how you have creation. That's how you have the ability to have ultimately physical things, this physical world around us. It's by means of the Hebrew letters, which are called vessels. But the languages of the world, it could be maybe by convention that they decide on a specific word for an object. But it's like in what's called in Kabbalah the scattering or the shattering of the vessels. You have these sparks of holiness, these lights that are scattered about all of creation, and linguistically, they're scattered about all different words, all different languages that people speak. And a good activity, a fun word play, a word game, is either academically or just on your own to think about words, such as words in English, and think of what would be the Hebrew word for that. What would be the Hebrew word that sounds like that English word? Because that activity, it's a game activity. It's like the idea is to make a vessel to contain some light that's been scattered about the world. So you're providing a vessel by suggesting, by thinking of a Hebrew word to contain that light, to contain that word in another language. Also, the other idea to have in mind is that the Hebrew name for something speaks to the essence of that thing. Like the Hebrew name, or the Hebrew word, how do you call this object? Is it by convention, or is there something meaningful here? Like the word stone in Hebrew is even, aleph, beis, nun. So, ban is like to build reality. Like you build reality through a lot of stones. And then aleph, the first of the Hebrew letters, reminds us of the Elufo Sha'olam, the oneness of all of creation, the one God. So it reminds us that as we build reality, that we are building reality with the intent that we're revealing the oneness of all of creation. In every stone. Like for instance, now it's very windy. So there's some naturalists that feel like wind is like the great connecting force, that the wind goes through everything in all of nature. But really, the highest is to feel like the oneness is just God alone, permeating every aspect of creation. So that's another lesson. Another lesson is that when Mashiach, when the Redeemer comes, that we will all speak Hebrew, we'll all speak the language of creation. And so what does that mean? We're all going to go into Ulpan and learn Hebrew, maybe. But something else we can suggest is something that's called in chaos theory spontaneous order. That to have these lights, these words in other languages scattered about all of creation, it's like a state of chaos. You have light, but you don't have vessels, as explained in Kabbalah. And what did we say is that the Hebrew letters, the language of creation, the creation is created by means of the Hebrew letters, of the 22 Hebrew letters. Those are the vessels for the divine light. So one suggestion is that there will be spontaneous order in that all these lost, wayward lights will be redeemed in their source in the Hebrew language. So then of course everyone will speak Hebrew because there'll be no excitement, no interest in any other language but Hebrew. So we can start that today again by imagining taking a word that's a very popular word, some word that a lot of people like in English, and imagining just on your own what would be a Hebrew word that sounds like that word. You can look at some previous videos, we've done that, and so that's another game to play. Another tip is making use of what's called hysterical strength. Now, hysterical strength is where you have like a life and death situation, God forbid, typically, and a person has been shown to do some superhuman feat, something that on their own it would not be possible, according to the natural order of things. For instance, in 1962, this has been well documented, but there was a case in 1962 where you have a mother lifting a car off of her baby. And so inspired was comic artist Jack Kirby by this story that he created a superhero character called the Incredible Hulk. Who's the Incredible Hulk? He starts off as this very nice scientist, and then push comes to shove, he turns into the Incredible Hulk. Right? So this is all based on this episode, on this real story of hysterical strength from 1962. So why are we bringing historical strength as related to learning languages? Because there's another example of historical strength that's not talked about so much in terms of related to historical strength. It's called hysteria. But really we can frame it and put it into our discussion and say that it's maybe an example of historical strength. This is the famous Anna O, written about in the writings of Freud. Freud was not her therapist, but Freud was the one that apparently made this Anna O famous. Who was Anna O? Anna O was Bertha Pappenheim. That was her real name. This Jewish lady in Austria. She passed away right before World War II. So this Bertha Pappenheim, after her father had passed away, she had bouts for years of hysteric episodes. And one of the really interesting things that would happen during these episodes is that she would not be able to speak her native language of German, her mother tongue of German. It was blocked. She could understand but not speak. And then sometimes she wouldn't be able to speak at all, and at other times she would be able to speak one of these other languages that she knew, either English, Italian, or French. But she would be able to speak those languages fluently. So again, this was something that was written about as a a sign of hysteria, as the result of losing her father. Traumatic experience, God forbid. So there's two languages in Hebrew, two main languages, actually in Jewish tradition. One is called Hebrew, right, as we've been talking about, and the other is Yiddish. So it says of Yiddish that Yiddish is the mama lashon. It's the language of the heart. It's the mother language. It's a language that people spoke it at home. It's to kind of define the home experience. Whereas Hebrew is like the father language. The more, if we want to convey Torah, Bible teachings, this is done in Hebrew. So what can we learn from the fact that her mother tongue, she also knew Yiddish, this Bertha Pappenheim. She actually translated different works from Yiddish into German. So what would we say about the mother tongue? Here we'll say Yiddish. Actually, German is very similar to Yiddish, but here we'll say that your heart is blocked. Like when her father, to abstract it, to explain it psychologically, that her heart was blocked after her father passed away. And she was searching for another language to be fluent in. And she had not yet, today we're going to say that language that we search for is Hebrew. If we want to have historical strength, we want to have the superhuman ability to learn Hebrew. So we have to not think about limits. We have to just be so focused on the goal that we don't think about like the mother lifting the car off her baby. We're so focused on this goal because we believe that God is putting us here to fulfill our potential, and perhaps part of that is to learn Hebrew. Definitely a good idea. So how did Bertha Pappenheim phrase this in her own words? Again, we're saying that the work is to learn Hebrew. So she called her healing process as remembering work. What did she remember? She was remembering the historic episodes. She was reliving and remembering those historic episodes. She called it remembering work. What was she remembering? Probably it was all surrounding the loss of her father. So again, we said the Hebrew is the father principle and Yiddish is the mother principle. Her heart was blocked, right? the Mamalashon, the language of the heart, was blocked, either German or Yiddish. Right? We said the German is the most language similar to Yiddish, and Bertha knew both very well. But remembering work, we're going to say that is the work of remembering Hebrew. That our soul knows Hebrew, it's language of creation after all. And if we do away with that disconnect between ourselves and creation, then we are remembering Hebrew. Not learning Hebrew, not understanding Hebrew, remembering Hebrew. So there's a very important teaching behind this. It's part of the Ten Commandments. It says to Zachor v'Shamor, to remember and safeguard the day of the Sabbath, Saturday. So always in Kabbalah, it's explained that to remember is a father principle, and to safeguard is a mother principle. Like we said, the Yiddish is like the language of the home. Like you hopefully, those that have a healthy upbringing, healthy childhood, they felt safe. Their mother nurtured them. They felt safe. They felt safe at home. But to remember, the remembering work of Bertha Pappenheim, that was the result of losing her father, right? So that's the father principle, is to remember Hebrew, to remember the language of creation, to remember our Father in heaven, ultimately. And it should be done with a lot of joy. It says that simcha paretz gader, that joy breaks through all boundaries. This is not the Incredible Hulk, if you want to, we want to, in this generation, we can have a joyful, hysterical strength. We can do it in a way of joy. We should do it in a way of joy. It says, Eim abanim smecha, that the mother of children, is joyous. We should, and also simcha paretz gader, that joy breaks through all boundaries and limits. So we should connect both to our father and mother, connect to our Father in heaven, connect to our desire to make this world a dwelling place for God. And we should do it with joy. And we should know that we could, through joy, to remember the Hebrew language, to live amongst this the fact that all of reality is an expression of the Hebrew language, and that's where thoughts and ideas are most clearly expressed. So, thank you very much. So another good piece of advice is to start with the Hebrew letters themselves. The form of the Hebrew letters is significant. The value of the Hebrew letters, it's called gematria, is significant. There's a book from my teacher, Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, called The Hebrew Letters, which would be a good place to start. And to meditate on each of the Hebrew letters. Just another tip.